Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today, just a real quick one by request. And I had a question on a video, a comment, and I'm not even sure what video it was on, but I really appreciated this. And there is kids screaming out by the pool. But I'm going to try to get through this. And I like making these by request videos. If I don't have to research something, I can just talk about something off the top of my head. And also, if it's important and if it might relate to future videos. And the Popol Vuh, it's just a sacred Mayan creation text, and this is ancient origins, and I don't want to read a lot, but just an introduction for those of you who are not too familiar with the Popol Vuh. It says one of the most famous of all creation stories is that found within the book of Genesis, where the Judeo-Christian God is said to have created the world in 6 days. Prior to the coming of Christianity to Mesoamerica, its peoples also had their own creation myths, the most significant that we know of today being the Popol Vuh. The Popol Vuh, variously translated as the Council Book, the Book of the People, or literally as the Book of Ma'at, is the corpus mythological and historical narratives, including the creation story according to the Quiche Mayan peoples. These were a branch of the Maya that dominated the western highlands of modern-day Guatemala prior to the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century. And that is the group of Mayans that, looking into it myself, I believe they had some of the oldest text. And when we say the Mayan text and the Egyptian text, this is something that people comment on my videos about a lot. And I say, like, the Egyptians had their proportions exactly correct. And then I say, in my next sentence, it was somebody who preceded the Egyptians that actually built these structures. So, and sometimes I do stop myself and I say, you know, the people that we refer to as the Egyptians or the pre-Egyptians, and I think the Egyptians and the Mayans had a prior knowledge or an inherited knowledge that came down to them, and we call it the Egyptian text or the Mayan text. But if we really want to be specific, it should be the culture that handed down their knowledge to the Egyptians and the Mayans. The Mayan calendar, it wasn't the Mayans. That's just what they got handed down to them, and they preserved in their, mythology, and they wanted to make sure this information stayed alive, because I think the information, goes back maybe, who knows, 10, 12,000 years? Just because a lot of these creation myths, they seem to be myths about the world restarting, not the actual creation of the world, restarting. And I think that we're living now, in the fifth world of the Mayans, and geological studies and science is now catching up with these ancient myths, and I just wanted to mention that. And I have also been asked, well, why is history so important? Why are you so interested in ancient history? Well, I think it's fascinating. Humans have been around basically in our form for about 200,000 years. And the only thing we know of is like the last 6,000 years. And we kind of slap ourselves on the back if we kind of wrap our heads around what went on, 12,000 years prior to now. We seem, very congratulatory that we're picking up 1/20th of the story of our species. And I think there is things that we are just learning about times about 12,000 years ago, that it was literally hell on earth. And a lot of these mythologies, people say they're kind of fanciful tales and just myths, but they actually reflect what science is proving happened in this cataclysmic time, 11,600 and 12,800 years ago, and these two events seem to kind of get lumped together, and I understand that. And it just seems with a lot of these cultures, and maybe the Great Pyramid and Göbekli Tepe was buried, and we know this history goes back that far. Were they preserving knowledge for future generations like us? And if we knew a comet was going to hit and it was going to be pretty dicey if the humans were going to, make it through it, would we preserve our history? Would we erect structures that would preserve what our, culture believed in? That is something that I find absolutely fascinating. And let me just read a little bit from the Popol Vuh, where it seems to reflect this time period about 11,600 to 12,800 years ago. Now let me just read from Graham Hancock's Magicians of the Gods, where he quotes from the Popol Vuh here. They were endowed with intelligence. They saw and instantly they could see far. They succeeded in seeing, they succeeded in knowing all that there is in the world. When they looked, instantly they saw all around them, and they contemplated in turn the arc of heaven and the round face of the earth. The things hidden in the distance they saw all without first having to move. At once they saw the world, and so too, from where they were, they saw it. Great was their wisdom, their sight reached to the forests and lakes, the seas, the mountains, and the valleys. And the heart of heaven blew mist into their eyes, which clouded their sight, as when a mirror is brethren on. Their eyes were covered, and they could see only what was close, only that was clear to them. In this way, all the wisdom and all the knowledge of the forefathers was destroyed. A flood was brought about by the heart of heaven. A heavy realm fell from the sky. The face of the earth was darkened, and a black rain began to fall by night and day. The faces of the sun and the moon were covered. There was much hail, black rain, and mist, and indestructible cold. Indescribable cold, excuse me. So that is a little bit from the Popol Vuh, and it just sounds like the events that Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson talk about that happened roughly 12,000 years ago. And is there other myths that reflect this time? Well, it appears that is the case. Was it Phaeton in the Greek mythology and that whole story? But I just wanted to read a little bit, and it says that the earth was darkened for 26 years. And we have no idea how devastating the comet impact would be. And there's periods of darkness kind of told in mythologies from different periods of time. I think that is something that really we need to wrap our heads around. And darkness, that would create death and destruction. Now, I've had other questions. Do the Mayan texts correlate with the Egyptian text at all? Well, there's a lot of similarities, and if some of you know them, you can leave them in the comments section. But the two twin gods from the Popol Vuh, and they are named Hanupu and Zabalanke, and these are the twins. And really the origin of these names is what you got to look at, and what they refer to also. But what I find interesting is the shorter names of these. And for Hanupu, it is Apu. And in the ancient Egyptian text, the Sphinx Temple not only is called Tep-2F, but it's also called the Temple of Anpu in a few texts I will be talking about shortly. And Anpu is Anubis. The kings here, Ahwa or Ahu. I'm not sure how that is pronounced, but that looks a lot like Sahu, the Egyptian name for Orion, and Orion is definitely the lord or the king. And let me just do a little reading from a book called Orion's Cartwheel that I found was fairly interesting. It says, Hanupu and Zabalanke grew quickly again into adults and woke up 3 of the old gods, 2 of whom paddled them in a huge canoe to emerge from a crack in the back of a gigantic cosmic turtle. And I talked about the turtle in the mythology as in regards to the Mesoamericans and the Native Americans. But this is really, I think, where it springs from, the earliest Mayan text, or where they inherited that knowledge. And it goes on to say, they are paddling a canoe because the celestial Nile is the Milky Way, and I've made many videos where I show that in different Native American myths. And it says, where was that? It was the place of creation. It was the celestial ball court of the Maya. It was Orion's belt. And here, that Mayan inherited calendar starts 3114 BC, same as the first dynasties of Egypt pretty much. Are these connected through some original source text where they both kind of came from the same place? Who knows? That is all up for speculation, but there is definite hints that that just may be so. I hope you thought that was interesting. Y'all have a nice day.